Deep right field. Down the line it goes. Castellanos is out of room. It's out of runner goes. 3-2 pitch hit down the line. Is it fair? It is a fair ball. Into the corner. Off and running. Chu. Yu Chang around third. He's going to score easily. And into second. Hit hard. Hit deep. Up and out. Goes Amed Rosario. And there's a fly ball. Left field. It's deep. It's up. It's gone to the porch. Hit pretty well. Deep left center field. It is gone to Souvenir City.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. I'm your host, Max Goldstein, joined as always by my co-host, Mel Kirby. And what a day it was today to be a Cleveland Guardians fan. As most of you listeners and viewers know, the Cleveland Guardians defeated the Chicago White Sox last night in a thriller of a matchup, 12-9. We came out victorious after a miraculous comeback, being down 8-2 in the ninth inning. But we'll get into that later on in the podcast, Mel. But to recap last week, you know, we got swept by LA, but the Guardians have been showing a ton of fight lately. We've won 8 out of our last 10 games. I want you to go into that a little bit, see what kind of changes from your perspective that you've seen, and how we can keep this momentum going.
Yeah, like I am running on fumes today. Like last night was just so crazy, and I honestly was going to go to bed in like the 8th inning after Ghost gave up that home run after the Amed Rosario drop fly ball, just because I have to wake up early. So I'm in bed getting ready to go to bed, and I checked the score on my phone, and then I pulled it back up on the DirecTV stream on my phone, and it was game over from there. I was locked in. But yeah, it just goes to show this team has no quit in them. And I think that's one of the most impressive things we can take away from this first 29 games is don't ever turn the TV off, right? Like that's one thing I think everybody's kind of learning right now. Like this team's never out of it. Like they were down 8-2 in the ninth inning last night, and they scored 6 runs, and they ended up winning the game, as we know, which, like you said, we'll get into later. But the offense is why we're where we're at. And I think the craziest part is heading into the season, I think we all agreed that the starting rotation was going to be our strength. And, you know, we were all a little bit worried about the bullpen and the offense. And, you know, with Chris Valaika coming on board and just this contact approach, like, don't worry about the home runs. They'll come, just make contact. You like good things happen when you just simply put the bat to the ball. Right. And we're seeing that like during this latest stretch, they're scoring 5.5 runs a game. And each of the last now 6 wins, 5-6 wins, the offense has trailed. So this team's coming from behind. And early in the season, they weren't beating the good teams, right? That was the big complaint from people. Now they're starting to beat these good teams. I mean, this is against San Diego, Toronto, who's a World Series favorite. And then last night against the White Sox, who, you know, most predicted to win the AL Central. And, you know, they won this game last night with Miles Straw, Jose, and Franmil going 0 for 15. And if you would have told me we'd score 12 runs and score 6 runs in the 9th inning, when those guys go a combined 0 for 15, I would have told you were crazy. But I think that's why this team is seeing so much success, timely hitting. And they're not just solely relying on Jose Ramirez, right? They're getting those contributions from the guys at the bottom of the lineup. The Andres Jimenez, you know, Amed Rosario had 2 hits last night, which was great to see. And Austin Hedges, I never thought I'd say it, but he's heating up a little bit. And these are the things when these guys at the bottom are getting on base, to turn it back over to Miles Straw, Stephen Kwan, and Jose Ramirez. There's not really a weak spot in this lineup right now.
Yeah, it has been an absolute pleasure to watch, especially of late. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the Guardians have won 8 out of their last 10 games, and they've been scoring on average 5.5. So when you're dealing with our pitching staff, I know Plesac had his struggles. We're about to get into that. Savali had a nice bounce back start recently. So I would say that most of the time, 6 runs is going to get you a win. And if we can just continue to increase that number of runs per game, we're going to be just fine. But what really stands out to me with the offensive, surge of late is hitting with runners in scoring position, as well as hitting with 2 outs. I mean, our 2 out hitting this season, our hitting with runners in scoring position, we didn't expect this kind of offense going into the season, especially with so many young guys. But I think right now, Mel, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got like 4 guys hitting above 300. Fran Miller is starting to heat up. It's about time he's turned things around, and he's doing that just fine. And
in like 12, in like 12 plate appearances, Andres Gimenez will have qualified to be, among the league leaders. He just doesn't have enough plate appearances right now. And he'd be 3rd in the league in batting average right now. And that's a guy who we were all like, oh, he's just kind of going to fill in at second and short until we can get Gabriel Arias or Brian Rocchio up here. And he's making a case that he could be here long term, right? Like, I think all of us kind of just pictured him as like a stopgap. Maybe you could trade him, whatever the case may be. And it's turning into a lot more than that from him. And I would have never thought Owen Miller and Andres Gimenez would be in the top 10 in batting average.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
They're absolutely killing it this season. And all props to the coaching staff, like you were saying at the beginning. This all comes down to a simple approach. That's what hitting is. And I'm not a Major League Baseball player, so I can't speak for them. But, I mean, I think we're seeing it right now with Franmil Reyes. It seemed like he was incredibly off balance throughout the first couple weeks of the season. And we were even talking about possibly having to sit him more often, or worst case scenario, sending him down to AAA just to get his head back on straight. But recently, he's just putting the bat on the ball, hitting it wherever it goes, and he's putting up quality at bats and timely at bats as well. So it's just a simple approach that these guys are taking, and it's what's winning them games right now. But just to recap last week, we were recording in Game 2 of the doubleheader against the San Diego Padres. So that game didn't have exactly the right start that we wanted. Cal Quantrill gave up 3 runs in that first inning, but we ended up pulling out the win, and we split the doubleheader there. So pretty good effort by the Guardians and taking care of business heading into the series against the Chicago White Sox. But 2 guys that we're going to be highlighting, and we just mentioned, Owen Miller and Josh Naylor. How about these guys?
Look at that trade.
Two guys we acquired from the San Diego Padres for that Mike Clevenger trade. What's the impact? I mean, it seems like these guys, along with Jose Ramirez, are keeping us on above surface and taking us to that next level as a team.
Yeah, I mean, that trade right there, I mean, that might go down as one of the best trades in franchise history. Like,
could be.
Mike Clevenger has only pitched 19 innings for the Padres following that 2020 trade. This start he made in Game 1 against us last week was his first start since then, and since those 19 innings. And we're sitting here with Owen Miller, Josh Naylor, Austin Hedges, Cal Quantrill, Joey Cantillo down in the minors. I mean, they absolutely fleeced the Padres in this deal. And we mentioned Owen Miller earlier, like top 5 in doubles, top 5 in OPS, top 10 in batting average. Like we're really seeing the impact of Chris Valleca, I think, in a guy like Owen Miller. Owen Miller, before the lockout, spent a lot of time with Chris Valleca, just working on approach and, getting to some of those pitches, laying off some of the pitches he was chasing last season. And last season, he just had no confidence, right? Like, you could see it all in his face. Like, when he entered that batter's box, he looked overmatched. This year, he walks in that box with swag, with confidence, and he looks like he belongs. And he's coming up with those timely hits. And I know he's probably not the ideal guy to be in that cleanup spot just due to the lack of power, but he's definitely not doing any worse than Franmil Reyes was in that cleanup spot right now. And teams are starting to pitch to Jose Ramirez a little bit more. And, obviously Josh Naylor is like playing like a dude on fire this year. And, a lot of people were down on him in the offseason, just coming off the injury, that he should be a bench guy and all this. And we never wavered on him, right? Like, that intensity, that grit he brings, it's well documented. We talked about it a lot. You just can't match it. You cannot teach a player to play with the kind of heart that Josh Naylor does. And, just these kids coming together, and I preach it all the time. If we can just keep our expectations in check, it's so fun to watch guys like Owen Miller, Josh Naylor, Andres Jimenez, all these young kids, Stephen Kwan, who are just growing every day, and they're coming up big in big moments. Like, it's so fun to watch if we don't get hung up on the win-loss record. It's a blast.
Yeah, it's been really, really fun season to watch. And in a way, it kind of reminds me of what the Cleveland Cavaliers accomplished this season. And,
they were fun.
You go into a season, no expectations, and then out of nowhere, you're one of the best defensive teams. And in this case, it would be our pitching. But, they went into the season having no expectations, and they ended up, unfortunately not making the playoffs, but they made the play-in tournament. So, if the Guardians can somehow fleece a wild card spot, possibly take the AL Central crown this year, I mean, even if not, I can already tell that this season is going to be huge for the progression and development of these young guys that you were just mentioning: Palacios, Kwan, Jimenez, Owen Miller, and only good things to come.
And that's like, that's a big thing too with these, when you have such a young team, like the youngest team in baseball. Like, they don't care that nobody predicted them to be any good. Like,
right.
You can't tell them nothing. When they came off that 7-game losing streak. Now they've won 8 out of 10. Sometimes that's all it takes to show these kids like really what they're capable of and believe in themselves. We know camaraderie isn't an issue with this team. They love each other. You can tell they love playing together. And that's part of the reason they're never out of any game. And you mentioned Richie Palacios. And, I know before the doubleheader, against Toronto over the weekend, they sent him down. And, loyal listener Chuck actually asked as a question this week, could we see Palacios back up here, and why was he sent down at all? And we saw it last night. Right. Andres Jimenez has played well enough where we're going to start seeing him play shortstop almost every game. And as we know, Tito loves getting Amed Rosario in the lineup. So he's going to be taking a lot more reps in left field. It's always a roller coaster with him out there, but that's why Palacios got sent down. Obviously, Palacios came up here. He impressed people. He's got that same kind of contact bat to ball approach that Stephen Kwan, Owen Miller, that these guys are starting to have all throughout this lineup this year, which has made them a top 5 offense in baseball. So there's no doubt that Palacios fits into what they're doing here, right? But it doesn't make sense for him to sit on the bench up here. He's going to go down to AAA. He's going to get every day at bats, continue working on his craft, and he'll be back up here probably closer to the deadline once, because as we know, this first half of this season is all about prospect evaluation. All these guys they added to the 40-man roster, we're starting to see them at the major league level, and they're starting to evaluate what they have there, because there's no denying they have to consolidate prospects at this deadline. Logic tells you they'll trade for a controllable bat. I've said it before. I think Amed Rosario's days on this team are numbered. So I think once all that kind of sorts itself out, we'll be seeing a lot more Richie Palacios up here in Cleveland.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's got a bright future here. He certainly fits the profile as to what we would need, in the future. But I mean, let's just talk about how the team has been playing of late. We had a 4-game series against the Toronto Blue Jays, and we went into that losing. We went into that right after our series against the Padres. But just to say that we had lost at that point 6 out of our last 7 games, to go in against a team like the Toronto Blue Jays and steal 3 out of 4. It all starts on Thursday night with Aaron Savali. A little bit of a bounce back game for him. He hasn't been that stellar this season. Clearly there's something missing in his game. But after giving up a 2-run homer to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the first inning, I looked at the screen. I was like, classic. I mean, what is going on with this guy, and where is his head at? But he bounced back really, really well, gave us an opportunity to win the game late. And he went 6 innings, 5 2/3, 4 runs, 8 strikeouts.
Should have never came out for the 6th.
Right. Shouldn't have come out.
It's a pattern now.
And I think Tito just trusts the guys that have been here for a little bit. When they've earned that trust and have had that major league success, sometimes he just lets them hang in there. But I think it's become a bit of a pattern now. He might be more aware of it. But I mean, talk about that win Thursday night. Franmil Reyes recorded 3 hits, to get himself back on track. Had a couple RBIs as well. But I wanted to hear your thoughts to kick off that series. It was really important for us to get a win. And you mentioned it earlier on in the podcast. It was a come from behind win.
Yeah.
So just something to build that stamina of confidence.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I thought the same thing. When Savali gave up that 2-run homer, I'm like, we're going to get blown out tonight, aren't we? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Jose Barrios, like he's an outstanding pitcher. Honestly, Toronto's whole starting rotation has performed at a really high level all season, which has been kind of carrying their offense so far, which is, been off to a really slow start. But I think just seeing Savali be able to settle in, I think people underestimate how important it was for him to get through at least 5 innings, because that gives him a chance to work through his struggles and utilize his pitches and get a feel for his pitches. And, there's nothing like doing it in a game. You can throw bullpens, you can pitch on the side, but he really needed that boost of confidence to get through. He easily could have caved, right? Like, this is a tough lineup. He already gave up a 2-run homer, and we've seen it spiral for him before. And for him to just kind of tighten it up and get him through 5 2/3 innings, and it's all about giving the team a chance, right? We've mentioned it. This team's never out of it. The pitching just needs to keep them in the game right now. And we saw Stephen Kwan with his first major league home run. That was super exciting. It was also from that game. You mentioned Franmil Reyes and his 3 hits, but in the 4th inning, he scored on a beat the shift single by Andres Jimenez. And that's another sign that Andres Jimenez is just clicking on all cylinders right now, because teams shift dramatically against Andres Jimenez. And last year, he's just beaten balls right into the shift. And for him to be putting in that work to beat the shift, he's going to, force teams to be honest and play him straight up. And that's going to just open so many more holes for him. And, he's having success now, but if he can get those fielders back in their normal positions, we're going to see a lot more from Andres Jimenez. So that was big for me to see that from Jimenez in that one as well.
Yeah. I mean, he's clicking on all cylinders, and I love how Tito has him in the 7th spot. It really gives that back end of the lineup. He's either in the 7 or 8 spot right now, and just to have that back end of the lineup with 5, 6, 7, 8 being it's Josh Naylor, Franmil Reyes. You can throw Andres Jimenez in there, and then Austin Hedges is heating up a little bit himself. Just to kick it off right off to the top of the order with Miles Straw, Stephen Kwan, and Jose Ramirez, who are on base percentage machines. I mean, if you have guys on base going into an inning with Stephen Kwan, Jose Ramirez, and Miles Straw coming up to the plate, you're in a pretty good position. And we saw it last night. I think that's what the bottom of the top of the 11th inning for the Guardians was, and we ended up coming out with a win in that one. And Josh Naylor God bless him, what a night for him. But we'll get to that in just a bit. But game 1 of the doubleheader, Friday got rained out, so Saturday there was a doubleheader against the Blue Jays. We're going to skip game 1. Not really much to talk about. Shane Bieber wasn't his normal self.
I do want to touch on that velocity issue, though. We've heard, it's the first time in his major league career that he hasn't recorded a strikeout. And, we've been saying just keep an eye on his velocity since his, first start over a month ago. And he didn't touch 92 miles an hour on Saturday, which, I mean, it's starting to get a little bit concerning, because he doesn't have a feel for it? Is there still some issues following that shoulder injury last season. And, not that I was ever behind. I don't think this organization really ever needs to extend their starting pitcher just because they have so much talent coming behind them. And that's just how they operate. They don't really spend the money on the starting pitching because they're always developing the next guy. They always spend their high draft picks on dominant starting pitching, which they did last year with Gavin Williams. But I know the wind had a lot to do with his command issues, but Plesac had a velocity issue as well. And last night we saw him get his velocity back up to 93-ish. So we'll just see how Shane Bieber, what he can do about that. But he's not fooling anybody throwing 89, 90 mile an hour, batting practice balls up there, especially to that lineup, which, just wasn't our day. Kevin Gausman was dealing. He doesn't walk anybody. And, the offense got shut out. Not much other than Shane Bieber to talk about in that one for sure.
Yeah, he'll get back on track. Shane is a grade A1 professional. We've seen what he's done in this league. All-Star Game MVP. He has a Cy Young Award. And he's our guy. Day in, day out, if we need a matchup one, you're putting him on the bump 10 out of 10 times. So, I think he'll get his confidence back. I think it was just a little blip in the road, which can happen, and we'll just move on from that. But game one, not really much to talk about. Lost 8-3. But game two, Tristan McKenzie, man, coming out, stifling the Blue Jays bats. The Guardians broke theirs out as well, and they won 8-2. But Tristan retired the final 11 batters that he faced, and he picked up his second straight win. So it seems like he's starting to find some consistency getting deep into games, which is absolutely massive for this rotation and their continued success. What are your thoughts on Tristan? He's looking really, really good this season.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing for him. If he can command his pitches and not walk anybody, limit his walks, he's going to get deep into games. And that's always been the biggest thing. Last year he was out of games in the third, fourth inning just because he wasn't commanding his pitches well. But he's really finding that consistency. This was his second straight win. He shut down Oakland's lineup last weekend. You mentioned the success he had against Toronto. And I think confidence it's always been mental with Tristan. No one can deny his stuff plays. Like, his stuff plays at this level. He's got nasty stuff. It's just a matter of him believing in it. Sometimes he nibbles a little too much. And it's like, dude, you're up there throwing gas. Like, he plays off his pitches well. And, once Tristan believes in himself, this is who we're seeing. We're seeing this guy who's going up there and he's getting swings and misses, and getting deep into games, which really helped that bullpen on Saturday, considering Bieber had the short outing. So they couldn't ask for a better outing out of Tristan. And, Andre Semenis with the defense behind him on Saturday too. In the first inning, he robbed Gurriel of a hit, and it was a line drive up the middle. And then in the fourth inning, he snagged a ball that literally almost took Tristan McKenzie's head off, and he just made it look so easy. Handles it on the hop, slides around, gets up, throws it to first like nothing. And that's what the Gold Glove defenders do, right? Of course, they make the easy plays, but they make those really difficult plays look easy too. And I think we're starting to see just how good of a defender Andre Semenis is. And, that's why, rightfully so, we're seeing him get the at-bats at shortstop, his natural position, and he's earned them. So, that's always going to make your starting pitcher happy when you're making plays like that behind him.
Yeah. This defense, really starting to get excited about it, especially Andre Semenis up the middle there. Whether he's playing second or short, I can always trust him to make the play. And, recently he's made a couple really, really nice plays. And I think Josh Naylor's just booted the ball around a little bit at first base. But, his offense is certainly making up for those defensive miscues on that end. But let's go into Sunday's game. Mother's Day.
This was a fun
and
one.
Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there listening and watching. We appreciate all that you do, and hopefully you enjoyed your Sunday and Mother's Day with your families. So Mother's Day, what an exciting day. 4-3 win over the Blue Jays, and Connor Pilkington excuse me, messed up there a little bit. Connor Pilkington made his first major league start, and he really struggled in the first inning. The first 4 batters he faced all reached on a double, walk, 2 singles, and it took him 36 pitches to get through the first inning, but he limited the damage once again, and we had the chance to, stay in the game, and we ended up winning the game. So he went 3 2/3 while striking out 6. I wanted to hear your thoughts on his performance on Sunday. Big moment, and he definitely stood up to the occasion.
Yeah, this was a perfect end to just such a good weekend series. It was Cleveland's first series win against Toronto since 2019 up in Toronto, but I don't know about you. Like, I saw Connor Pilkington versus Alex Manoa, and Alex Manoa has been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball.
Easily.
Early in the season. So on paper, you're like, all right, we might get out of town with a series split here, and we would have been okay with it. And then you mentioned the struggles Pilkington had in the first inning. And obviously a lot of people are calling for his head, telling Tito to get him out of there, but he stuck with him. And he was able to give this team 3 2/3 innings pitch and get those 6 strikeouts. And it would have been really easy for a young guy to just be in over his head, again, let it spiral out of there, let it spiral downhill from there, like we talk about with Tristan. But the fact he was able to limit that damage and just kind of settle in and just be himself, right? And then we had Eli Morgan come in and give us those 3 1/3 innings pitch. So between the two of them, 2 young guys who, we know last year all the starting pitching injuries we had. And this year you got guys like Eli Morgan and Connor Pilkington and Peyton Battenfield and Logan T. Allen. They're all ready to step in, right? And we're seeing Eli Morgan in this bullpen role now because, I saw a lot of people wonder why Eli Morgan wasn't getting the start Sunday. And that's because they've kept him up here kind of as this, middle part of the game guy, give you a couple innings. And Tito actually talked about how that could be a really dominant role for Eli Morgan. He's got the stuff to be really, really good, just pitching a couple innings one time through the lineup. And that's, Tito said, like, that's a pretty good weapon in that role. So Connor Pilkington gets a chance, right? He's been stretched out at AAA ever since he went down earlier in the season after the COVID issues. And I was impressed with him. He's got a little bit more upside than Peyton Battenfield. For those who don't know, we got him in the Cesar Hernandez trade with the White Sox last year. So we got Connor Pilkington, and the White Sox got half a year of Cesar Hernandez. Like, once again, just what a move by Chris Antonetti, because we don't have any lefties in our starting rotation right now. So, for them to be able to throw that left-handed starter out there, like, he could be such a weapon. And I think we saw like what he's capable of doing out there as a starter.
Yeah. Nothing more to be more excited about. He really had some good stuff, and I love the way he bounced back. Sometimes, going into games like that, when we have like a bullpen arm going into the rotation for the start in a doubleheader, I kind of just think like, I just want to see some good quality stuff out of this guy. I'm not exactly expecting a win, but what he was able to do, especially with the first inning that he had to take on, to just stick with his stuff and really trust that he was in the right position to succeed. And props to Tito for keeping him out there, Carl Willis for cooling him down in the first inning, after a mound visit. Nothing more you could have asked from the kid. He really did a good job. Eli Morgan came in, did his job as he always has for this team. And it was a really, really exciting day. So the way it started, trailing 2-0 in the third, Kwan had a bloop double down to right and scored on a triple by Jose Ramirez. And there was and you tweeted out something against the Toronto fans who were calling us out for being a poverty franchise. Jose Ramirez, he reads these things, and I'm sure he had a couple thoughts going through his mind, and just to get him back and tie that game up 2-2. But moment of the game, I would say, is when Owen Miller, in 8th inning, I think we all know what I'm about to say, just absolutely crushed a ball over the left field wall and tied it up, had the place going bonkers. But then Oscar Mercado, considering all the ups and downs he's had through this season, to come in there, get that line drive RBI single, and have Passe come in and close it in the ninth. This team really reminds me of the Cavs. It's just like next guy up mentality, and it's so fun to watch. And, watching that game on Sunday, what were you thinking?
Yeah, and it's the timely hitting, right? Like Jose Ramirez is hitting .435 with runners in scoring position, including 5 extra base hits, 22 RBIs. Franmil Reyes is heating up, which obviously has given this team a whole different look. But, Owen Miller, since moving into the cleanup spot, has 6 RBIs. So although he may not be hitting a ton of home runs, we saw the one from him on Sunday, he's still having productive at-bats and doing his job. And then obviously Stephen Kwan back in that 2-hole. And the pitching just doing enough to keep this offense in the game. And we're just seeing the grit of these young kids. And it's going to be fun at the deadline when they can consolidate some of these guys and hopefully get a controllable bat like a Sean Murphy or a Brian Reynolds. So it's just going to be a super exciting summer. And we haven't even, got to touch on last night's game yet.
Yeah, and I was about to say last night's game, wow. For anybody that missed it, it's okay if you told me you went to bed. That's fine. It went a little late. But if you haven't heard what happened last night, you're living under a rock. It was an absolute career day for Josh Naylor. He had 8 RBIs, 2 home runs, a double, and all of this, guys, happened after the 8th inning. So
and that's
talk
a
about
record.
Yeah,
I knew there was a record in there.
Yeah, if you're talking about timely hitting and making the most of your at-bats, Josh Naylor did a phenomenal job last night of leading us back into that game. We went into the 9th inning trailing 8-2 on Andres Jimenez. Another guy we just can't stop talking about. Hit an Oppo Field home run, and then it all just to save that game for the White Sox. He was throwing straight darts, and I was just like, okay, it's nice, but I haven't seen any off-speed pitches. You better not stick with this. And first pitch, Josh Naylor absolutely crushes that ball. What was your reaction?
Yeah, like I couldn't believe it. We all know Josh Naylor has a little bit of pop, but enough credit too. Like Owen Miller fighting off that tough pitch with 2 strikes to, just bloop that single in there just to keep the game going. It shows he wasn't trying to do too much. That's going to get overlooked, obviously, because Josh Naylor was just playing out of his mind. But seeing the emotion from Josh Naylor, just gave me chills, straight chills. Less than a year ago, he had that gruesome injury. Nobody thought he'd be playing at all, let alone at this high of a level this early in the season. And it couldn't happen to a better dude. Josh Naylor is that dude. He said last night, he wants all the smoke, right? He heard those White Sox fans talking shit to him all night, and he did not back down from them. He did, just seeing the videos, he just chucked his batting helmet straight into the dugout. Stephen Kwan's just standing there in awe, just looking at Josh Naylor with all this emotion. And this team they never think they're out of it. And Franmil Reyes said it post-game last night, he knew something big was going to happen. They expect it now. They know they can hang with these good teams. And I'm telling you guys now, mark May 9th down, because, we all expected next year to be the year that they really succeed. But with a young team like this, a game like yesterday where they were completely out of it and they came back and found a way to win, that could turn the whole season around. And after this week against Chicago and Minnesota, their next 9 series are against Cincinnati, Detroit twice, Kansas City, Baltimore, Texas, Oakland, and Colorado. They couldn't ask for a more favorable schedule. And, through that stretch, this team could really get hot, and that's just going to shoot their confidence through the roof. And they just need to be in a good place heading into the trade deadline. And this schedule and the way they play against the Chicago White Sox and other teams in the Central, it sets them up that strap in, everybody, because I'm telling you, it's going to be a fun summer. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait. And, I might actually be in Chicago, another road game on July 24th. I'm looking at going to a game against the White Sox. So I mean, we'll see how it goes. We're 4-0 against the White Sox this season. We have 2 games coming up just to cap things off in the series tonight. Cal Quantrill is going up against Lucas Giolito, so that's going to be a really good matchup. Both those guys keep their composure on the mound, and they do a good job respectively. So hopefully the bats can keep it rolling for the Guardians tonight. But Wednesday, Aaron Savali is going to wrap up the series against Velasquez. And then we start our run with those favorable matchups you were just talking about against Cincinnati, Detroit twice. We got Kansas City, Baltimore, Texas, Oakland, Colorado. I just see wins sprinkled here and there all over the place. Like I'm really excited for the next month of Cleveland baseball. And just to touch on some things before we cap off the podcast here, just to some things to keep note of. Our guys are on an absolute tear, and we've been talking about that all day. But Franmil Reyes is really, really starting to heat up, guys. Just keep an eye on that. He was after an 0-26 stretch with 18 strikeouts on the road trip. Reyes now has hits in 7 of his last 8 games, and he's batting .522 with 5 RBIs and a couple home runs there. Owen Miller also moving into the cleanup spot. Just a little fun fact here. He's got 6 RBIs since moving into that spot. Overall, he's batting .338, which is 7th in the majors. He's got a .991 OPS, which is 6th in the major leagues, and then 10 doubles, which is tied 3rd. So, I mean, that kid just keeps tearing the ball up as well. But our bullpen, we're not where we are today without our bullpen, and they're doing a really good job. Anthony Ghost got a little bit unlucky last night with a 3-run home run that put us down 8-2.
Rosario didn't help him out.
No.
Kept dropping that fly ball.
Yeah, hey, look, I'm happy with the win. Everybody who made a mistake last night, just don't do it next time. But no, our bullpen continues to surprise people with a 3.24 ERA, which ranks 11th in the major leagues with a 1.07 WHIP, which is 4th. So, one more thing to touch on is Stephen Kwan. We love the kid. He's still in that 2-hole where he's batting .309. Which is top 20 in the majors, and he's got a 4.402 on base percentage, which ranks 10th in the major league. So just to cap off the podcast with some of those facts as we go into the end of this White Sox series and the beginning of our extended, before we come back home to play Cincinnati. But like I was saying, really just wanted to thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. Always remember to share, subscribe to Cleveland Media LLC, and give us a follow on Twitter. We're always active at Maxwell G24 and at Mellow_NIE91. Really excited to keep bringing you guys these podcasts weekly, but I'm going to pass it off to my co-host Mel to take us away here.
Yeah, let's keep an eye, see if Josh Naylor gets drilled in the ribs tonight by old school Tony La Russa. Let's see if he puts any of that crap into the game tonight. But it's going to be a fun one. Let's hope they build momentum. I want to thank everybody for listening. We'll see you again next week. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and thanks for listening.